Okay, good morning, everyone. We are learning Lila Nishmas Mindel Mariam Bas Kama Nuvrin Hanashama Shem Aliyah. Where are we? I think we're up to Kuf. We're up to Kuf Nun Beis Amud Beis, but we are up to Tanur Rabbanan, correct? If on the whatever, it's like 10 lines down. It's the third paragraph in the English. Tanur Rabbanan. Yeah, Baruch Tashuv Elokim Asher Nasana, and the Spirit. So it's going to be a lot of talk about the experiences. Clearly, a number of different opinions, as we already saw 2 opinions yesterday. Different opinions about the awareness of the deceased after death. So there's this notion, right? Our neshama is connected to the body. Even the notion of our neshama being connected to the body is a little bit hard to wrap our heads around. Does it mean they have to be in the body to be attached to the body? It's according to the Ramah, when we say umafli la'asos in Asher Yatzar, what we're actually saying is you act wondrously in the sense you're able to connect this physical thing together with this spiritual thing. It doesn't really. It's very hard for us to wrap our heads around to begin with. So it's not that complicated to start thinking about, what does it mean when the neshama is no longer attached to us? Even the attachment I don't understand, so I'm not as bothered. It's not as much of personally. Whatever this means, I don't know what's going on over here. I don't. But whatever, so, obviously when a person is no longer living, their body is no longer functioning, but the soul still has some connection down to earth, which, again, is not that much of a jump from whatever our current existence is, which is also mind-boggling. So, again, we'll see different opinions about that today, and mostly our discussion is going to be about the afterlife. So, Tanur Rabbanan, the spirit returns to Hashem who gave it. What does that mean? The spirit returns to Hashem. The word tashuv means you have to return it. So typically you have that concept of returning when someone lends you something, you return it to them. So Tanala, the Gemara says, Tanala, give to him, give to God, Kemoshe Nasan Allah, he gave it to you. What does that mean? B'tahara, give it back in purity. Hashem gave us Elokai Neshama Shenasat to be taharahi. You gave me a pure soul. It's a loan. It's a loan. When you have a loan, if someone lends you a car and you bring it back after 17 accidents, that's not very fair. That's not very right. If Hashem gave you a pure soul, bring it back, give it back pure. So avat b'tara, so too you must return the soul at the time of death in a state of purity. Mashal Malach Bas V'Adam, there's a parable to a king, Shechilek Big Day Malchus Lavadav, who gave royal apparel to his servants. Pikchin Sheben Kiplim Menichum Bekufsa, the wise servants folded and placed in a box for safekeeping. Tipshim Shehem Halchuvas Behem Malacha, the fools went ahead and they went, they did their own gardening, they went shopping, whatever they went to, they showed off in it. But bottom line is they didn't save it for important times. The Yamim, however, sometime later, Bikesh Melchas Kalev, the king wanted his garments back. The wise ones returned it to them where they were neatly pressed. They were they were put in the box. Remember, the fools returned it soiled. The king happily greeted the wise servants, and greeted the foolish ones with anger. Regarding the wise ones, he said, let my garments be placed in my chest. And let them go back to their homes in peace. Right? So this is obviously the nimshal over here is that Hashem, obviously the garment is the soul, and Hashem is saying, place it next to me. Hashem, the souls that are pure are going to be next to me. Right? Olam haba, the concept of olam haba is a sense of closeness to Hashem. However, whatever that is hard for us to conceptualize, our tradition is that that's the most blissful feeling of all. It's a sense of homecoming, or neshama ultimately is something which is distant. Right now it's homesick, it's distant, and when we come back to Shemayim, or the purer the soul, the closer it's able to get to God. The dirtier it is, the more barriers there are between us and Hashem. So in the mashal, in the parable, the soul that's clean, the clothes that are clean are kept close to the king, right? And the idea is our soul that's clean is going to have access and closeness to Hashem. Regarding the fools, he said, Klei yinasnu lechoves. Let it be placed in the launderer, which is obviously a reference to Gehenim. That is the notion of Gehenim. The notion of Gehenim is that the clothing has to be cleaned. Our soul, if it's dirty, it cannot go back to Hashem. It's impossible. And therefore, what has to happen is that the clothing has to be cleaned. And they, the servants themselves, will be confined in prison for their irresponsible behavior. They're going to be punished for what they did. So A, there's a cleansing that's necessary, and B, there's a punishment, right? They're both true. When we think about, from our perspective, the primary focus of Gehenim is not so much of the punishment, it's just that the dirty clothing doesn't have a place in Olam Haba. Or we sullied our soul, it's impossible for it to access Olam Haba, or Gan Eden, and therefore what it needs to go through is a cleansing process, and that's what Gehenim is all about, typically from a Jewish perspective. Okay, Alpha Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to Hashem. Al Gufan Shal Tzadikin Omer. Regarding the bodies of the righteous, he says, Yavo Shalom Yanucha Mishkavosam. Come in peace, let them rest upon their couches. Val Nishmasan Hu Omer. May the soul of my master be bundled in the bundle of life, right? We hear those words oftentimes said at the end of a funeral. What that means, the soul of my master be bundled in the bundle of life. What is the bundle of life? That's Hashem. And the idea is that the neshama, a pure neshama, gets reconnected to Hashem. The Hashem is, so to speak, the bundle of life, and Hashem is the source of all souls. The soul is going to, when we say a person's soul should be bundled up in the bundle of life, it means that the soul should go back to Hashem. What's very interesting over here is the fact that we speak about the bodies of tzaddikim as, just like in the parable, goes into peace. That there's this notion, right? In Yiddishkeit, we understand that there is not just a holy soul, there's a holy body as well. Right, it's very important position as opposed to Christianity, where they understand the soul, the body is damned, the body is dirty, the body is corrupt, and the soul is pure. Right, as Jews, as monotheists, we believe everything comes from Hashem, and therefore the body also, we have the ability to elevate the body. Right, this is the Ran in Drashos Haran explains like the rational reason why we go to pray, we go to daven by Kivrei Tzadikim, when we go to the righteous, the burial places of righteous people. We're not talking to them, we're not even asking them to do anything. What we're doing, the way the Ran understands it, is that a person who dedicates their life to holiness, their body becomes a chariot for holiness, right? Just like when you go to the Kotel, right? What are you doing there, right? What's there? Nothing's there. What's there is that it's a place that's saturated with holiness. It's a place where, whether the avoda in the base of English was done, and the closest we could get to that, the fact that all the tefillos were there, it's just like a shul. A shul is a place where you've learned and you've davened and you filled it, so to speak, with holiness. So too, a body that was dedicated to holiness, it also is holy. And that's what the Gemara over here is saying. It's not just the soul is going back. It's right in the parable. The garment goes back to the king, i.e., the soul, but then the body. The servants is told you could go in peace. The idea is that the body itself has a certain sanctity as well. That's how the Ran explains what we daven at Kivrei Tzadikim, because the body is saturated with holiness, but also just important for our own personal knowledge to recognize that we don't have this diametric opposition between body and soul, the recognition that they're both, the goal is to bring them together in a partnership. They are both actually holy. Okay. Regarding the bodies of the wicked, he says, Ein shalom amar Hashem l'Hashem, there shall be no peace, says Hashem, for the wicked, meaning their bodies are going to suffer. There's punishment. As for the soul of your enemy, may God sling it as from the hollow of a sling. Okay, so this is the term that you find a lot in Kabbalah. This notion, I'm not an expert, but the point is that the term kafakela is a term that you hear a lot from those sources. Kafakela literally means a slingshot, and there's this idea, two interpretations of a slingshot. One is that the soul of a rasha, a really bad person, is flung from one part of Shamayim to the other. The Maharal explains this in a very symbolic fashion, and that is that the good life is a life of balance, and the life of a rasha is a life of extremes. Both extremes sometimes even to the good, but it's not like long lasting good, and it goes back to the extremes of bad and back and forth, and therefore in Shamayim there is this notion of like extremes. There's not stability, there's not resting, but rather kafaka, like a slingshot, goes back and goes forth and goes back and forth. That's how some understand it. In addition, there are others who understand there's a reference to the notion of a Gilgal. One of the applications of the concept of reincarnation is that if a person does not live their life to the fullest over here, they are flung back onto earth, and that's the idea of the rasha. You didn't fulfill what you had to do, so sorry, buddy, you're going back down, and the neshama goes back down to earth to accomplish what it has to accomplish. Okay, Tani was taught on the Brayso Eliezer Omer. Nishmashan tzadikim genuzos tachas kisei hakavod. The souls of the righteous are placed beneath the heavenly throne. In other words, again, this idea that they're close to Hashem. That is the essence of Gan Eden. It's closeness to Hashem. So for the souls of the wicked, they are confined forever. Many understand not literally forever, because in Judaism there seemingly is no concept of eternal damnation, because the whole reason for evil is to bring about good, suffering is to bring about purity, punishment is to bring about a sense of purification, and therefore it doesn't literally mean forever, but it means a very long time. Umalach echad omed b'sofa olam, an angel stands on one end of the universe. Umalach achar b'sofa olam, and an angel stands on the other end of the universe. Umekam nishmasim zelazeh, and they sling the souls of the wicked back and forth. Again, per our explanation above, as for the soul of your enemy, may Hashem sling it from the hollow of a sling. Okay, Amalei Rabler of Nachman. Shalbeinu nimai. What happens to people in the middle? Not Rishaim, not Tzadikim. Amalei, Rav Nachman says, Ika shachivna lo amri lechu hai milsa. Had I died, I would never have told you this matter. In other words, Rav Nachman is saying to him is that, I had a tradition, and thank you for asking, because, I never taught it until now, and had I not taught it to you, who would have taught this to you? So, Hachi Amar Shmuel, I had this tradition from Shmuel. Apparently, he was the only one, and that's why he said, had I died, no one would have known this. Elu ve'elu duma nimsarim. Both these and those, the souls of the wicked, as well as the souls of the people in the middle, are handed over to the angel Duma. Duma from the word silent, because when we pass away, we are silent. We're no longer able to talk, no longer able to accomplish. Halalu yeshlam hanoach, halalu emahem hanoach. Those who led middle lives, they suffer, but ultimately they have rest. Those who are true Rishaim, they have no rest. In other words, again, the idea being, broadly speaking, in Yiddishkeit we understand that the purpose of punishment typically is to bring about a person's ability to then go ahead and enjoy the world to come, right? So we say, for example, this is the idea of Kaddish for 11 months, and that is that we're saying Kaddish for 11 months because we believe that as long as a person's not a Rasha, then they are going to be potentially in some level of Ganem up to 11 months, but not for a year, because a year already would be, that's like seen as a totality, that would be seen as like complete, and that would be seen as like, that's only for Rishaim, that they're there for more than a year. A year is already seen like a real unit, but less than that, we say that most people go through some level, of course, depends on our merit. Some people maybe just for a moment, some people, but up to 11 months for Beinani, and ultimately, Yesh Lamanoach, the idea is that after those 11 months, at the very latest, after those 11 months, Yesh Lamanoach, they have rest, they have tranquility, that they are at a state of peace because of the fact that they're no longer suffering on any level. Okay, and that's why halalu ein lahem hanoach, whereas the wicked, they don't have that rest. If a person's truly wicked, they don't get access, right? Not everyone gets into Gan Eden. If a person really lives an evil life, then they will suffer, but ultimately ultimately their soul will dissipate. That is the notion of kares. Kares means their soul is cut off. It doesn't have an eternal existence because of the fact that they don't deserve it. Okay, Amri Rav Mari, Amra Mari, Asim Sdikim Havu Afra. Even the bodies of the righteous are destined to become dust in the grave. And the dust shall return to the earth as it was, seemingly a reference to everybody. Okay, fine. And meaning even the righteous rot like everyone else. Okay, however, we have a story. The body, correct, the body. Hanu kapulao davi kafli ba'arad Rav Nachman. There are those diggers who were digging the land in a city where Rav Nachman lived, and they came upon the body of Rav Achai bar Yoshia, okay? Someone who died generations earlier. Nachar behu Rav Achai bar Yoshia. So they're digging, and they seemingly hit the body of this great sage, and he makes a noise. He yells out, right? Okay. Time to, right? And obviously this is something very, very shocking. Now, the Maharal learns this entire story to be allegorical, but one way or another, okay, so we'll read either this dialogue is actually taking place, or some allegorical dialogue that took place like in his head, but like a back and forth dialogue. Okay, one way or another. Asu v'amri le Rav Nachman. They were frightened. They came to Rav Nachman. Nachar bar Gavra, that a person snorted at us. Asa v'amr le. Rav Nachman came to the graveside and said to the corpse, Mani Umar, who are you? Amr le said, Ana Achai bar Yoshia. I'm the body of Achai bar Yoshia. Amr le. V'lav amr amari yasid stiki davar afra. What are you doing being a body? You're supposed to be dust already. You died generations ago. You're supposed to have decomposed. Amarle, Umani Mari. I don't know who this Mari person is, right? I have no idea what you're talking about. So, Mani Mari, I don't know who he is. I don't have to worry about what he said. Amarle, Rav Nachman said, fine, but Kruxiv, there's a pasuk. V'yashava afar al-aretz k'shahaya, the dust returns to earth as it was. Amarle, the body, so to speak, again, whether literally, figuratively, doesn't really matter, said to him, Dakrayach koheles le'krach mishlei. Whoever taught you Koheles, which you just quoted, did not teach you the book of Mishlei. In other words, Shkach, you're quoting Koheles, but you got to know the whole, everything. And there's another pasuk in Mishlei which qualifies this. What does it say? Siv urekav atzamos kina. The rotting of bones is caused by envy. Kol mi sheyesh lo kina belibo, someone who has envy in their hearts while they're alive, atzmosa markivin. Their bones rot. Kol she'ein lo kina belibo, ein atzmosa markivin. Their bones do not rot. In other words, he's saying, yes, it's true. Most people decompose, but if a person really lived a truly righteous life where they didn't have any envy, they didn't have any bad midos, then their body itself is going to be maintained. And there is this tradition that bodies of true tzaddikim do not decompose. Okay, Gashashe. Rav Nachman went and fell to Rav Achai's corpse to make sure there's really a corpse here. Chazia de Isbei Mashashi saw that there was really, not only was there bones, there's even some flesh there. Amar Lei said, Leikomar legavi de Beisa. Okay, so you didn't decompose. We're talking. Come, get up, come to my house. Amar Lei, the corpse said to Rav Nachman, Gales adaitach tafilu nevia lokaris. Forget it. Not only do you not learn the book of Mishlei, but you didn't even learn, the Nevi'im. Dichsev, it says in the Nevi'im, Vidatam kini Hashem, befischi es kivrosechem. The pasuk in Yecheskel says, you will recognize the name of Hashem when I do Tchias HaMesim, when I open your graves. You want me to do Tchias HaMesim now? Hashem does Tchias HaMesim, not you, not me. And therefore he said, He said, I'm not coming back. Okay, so why did Rav Achai not decompose? Okay, so, but at the end of the day, how do you deal with the pasuk that says that a body will decompose? All bodies will decompose. What that means is this follows, and that is that every righteous person, a truly righteous person, will not decompose. However, and regular people, their body will decompose. And the goal of the decomposition, the way the Ramchal understands this in Derech Hashem, is that part of the impact of the Chet of Adam HaRishon is that evil was embedded into us, right? The notion of Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. The word das means just a connection, meaning the Adam Yada Eschava, that means they're connected. So the idea is Eitz Hadas Tov Ra means that there's a connection between evil and good, and that means that evil becomes embedded into us. The only way that we're able to override that, or one of the typical way we're able to override that, is that it becomes so much a part of us. But in the next world, our body needs to be elevated. How is it elevated if it was immersed and connected to evil? So the decomposition of the body is part of the process of cleansing. In as much as our soul is being cleansed above, our body is being cleansed below by decomposing, and that is part of the cleansing process, that our body goes through that process, right? That's the idea of the rotting of the soul. So what we're saying over here is a truly righteous person does not need that. Okay, but even them, they cannot escape the curse of Adam Rishon, and therefore, even if their body didn't decompose, a moment before Tchias HaMesim, their body decomposes, and then it regenerates, because the entire world is going to regenerate, according to this approach. The entire world is going to be a fresh world, and therefore it cannot just be a continuity. Even if they didn't have to decompose, it'll decompose and then regenerate immediately, whereas most people, due to the fact that, most people, we strive, but most people have to go through a process of decomposition because of the sins that they committed in their lives. Okay? Further, Amrlehu Tzeduki the Ravo. A certain Tzeduki said to Ravo, you said that the souls of righteous are under the throne of Hashem. Okay, so if that's so, then we know that in the book of Shmuel, what happens is that Shaul goes ahead and brings back the neshama of Shmuel. Right? So what's going on? If it's Tachas Kisei HaKavod, imagine how could this Shnuk, how could this witch, essentially, right? So he goes to this witch, basically goes ahead and brings back the neshama of Shmuel for Shaul. How can he do so? If it's by Hashem is guarding it, how could this person do this? Amrlei Hasam Esoch Shneim Asar Chodesh Hava. There was within 12 months. Okay, so here we learn a new opinion, another perspective. Titania Kol Shneim Asar Chodesh Gufo Kayam V'Nishmaso Olav Yoredes. During the first 12 months after someone passes, the body remains intact, and therefore the soul goes back and forth. It's still connected to this world in some respect. La'achar Shneim Asar Chodesh Haguf Batel. The body ceases to exist. The body completely decomposes. V'Nishmaso Ola, and therefore the soul arises to the next world. V'Shuv En Yoredes, and therefore no longer descends. And therefore Shaul was able to bring Shmuel back down because it was within the 12 months, and the body is going back and forth, and therefore during that time, the soul is able to be brought about through this necromancer, through this witch, but beyond that, a person is not able to do so. And again, so we're seeing some of the sources, right? Just to review. Yesterday we saw the idea that during Shiva, the neshama itself is sitting Shiva itself. The neshama, right? So we can start to see the process over here in terms of some of the halachos that we have. During the first 7 days, the neshama itself is in the need of comfort, and therefore when we're doing nicham avelim, it's not just for the avelim, it's the neshama itself which has some connection. It's at the end of we know the idea is that during the time that there is a time that the neshama is still potentially suffering, but a Benoni, as long as the person's not a Rasha, it's still only during the first 11 months. We can understand why there's Kaddish during that time, and then there is that by the end of the year, the understanding is that the neshama is no longer coming back and forth, and therefore there is that next stage, right? So through these stories, we understand the different stages that we have around mourning is taking place. It's really in many. Yes, it's part of it is psychological, and part of it is just is not just, but is the different stages that a person needs for themselves. But it's also a reflection of what's happening to the neshama and to the body during that time. Okay, I'm Rav Yehuda Bereid Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei Rav. Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shila, said in the name of Rav, "Me'espedishal Adam, from a person's eulogy, meaning from the effect of the person's eulogy, Nikar and Ben Olam Habahu Imlav. You could see whether the person is going to Olam Haba or not. In other words, the way the Mefarshim understand this, if people are crying during the eulogy, then you could tell, this is a good person, and clearly they're going up to Shemaim. If no one's crying, then you could see that they're not going to Olam Haba. Another, sometimes, I don't know, I've been to a stadium where it's just like a joke fest. Not cool. It's not a good idea. It's a terrible idea. It's whatever, distasteful, but it happens in many cultures. It happens a lot. And the idea is that we're supposed to be thinking about the lost, thinking about who they are. Of course, the first one needs to smile for a second. That's okay. But yeah. Max, what do you say?
I was going to say that seems like that's more about the people who are still living who are doing it.
How good is the hesped? Right.
Yeah, so that's not fair to the deceased.
Yeah,
nothing to do with that?
Correct. Maybe you just have someone who just can't make people cry. I hear you. Let's keep on reading. Let's see. Aini, is this so? Amar layer of Rav of Shmuel Bar Shilas. Rav said to Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, kind of along the lines of what Max is saying, Achim bespeda, be careful to make a very moving eulogy at my funeral, right? He wanted to make sure, right? He said, Hassam came now, he said, I'm going to be there. Okay, and then, by the way, this is, they say that when a eulogy itself, is it for the people there, or is it for the mace? Right, but he's saying, I'm there. I'm watching you as you do that. Make sure it's a good one. But clearly, what he's saying over here is that I want you to make sure it's one that brings about people crying. To Max's points, why does he need to do that? In other words, if the person's really righteous, they're going to have to cry because that's clearly what's going on. Meaning, the Gemara is agreeing to you, but assuming the other assumption. The Gemara is assuming that if it's a person who's righteous, by definition, they'll be crying, even if it's a lousy eulogy. Right? So that's what the Gemara is asking. Rav was the greatest tzaddik of his generation. Of course, they're going to be crying. So the Gemara says lo kasha. So where the person's really righteous, so when the person is making the hesped, the person's eulogizing, he succeeds. Then the audience is going to be moved. But in a case where a person was not so virtuous, and he tries, and he might not be able to be successful. So in other words, it seems like Rav was being humble. In other words, when a person's really righteous, they're going to cry no matter what. When a person's not so righteous, it is on the responsibility on the person giving the hesped to ensure that people are saddened, and to ensure the person cries. So Rav over here is saying, please make sure that people cry, because if not, then it's going to reflect. It's not going to be good for me. I want to make sure that people are crying. One last dialogue about Hespedim. Amalei Abaye Rabba. Abaye said to his colleague Rabba, Kigo Mar, someone like yourself, the Sanu Le Kulu Pumpadisa. Everyone in Pumpadisa hates you. Awesome. Okay, so the Gemara said. By the way, the Gemara references this to Gemara in Ksubis. The Gemara in Ksubis says that if you are a communal leader and everyone likes you, you are a bad communal leader. You're clearly not doing a good job. It's just not possible. If everyone likes you, then you're clearly just like doing a popularity test and not actually moving people. Okay, very harsh and important words. Any position of leadership. So Abai says to Rabbah, to you, everyone hates you. No one's going to cry. Everyone's going to be celebrating, right? So man achim espeda amalei mistaya ad Rabba Barachana. Don't worry. If you and Rabba Barachana give a eulogy, people will cry. And it's all good. Don't worry. I did my part, and you'll do your part, and it'll be okay. Okay? Don't worry so much about what they say about you. Live a good life. Have a good day. Okay.